In 2012, the government document Social Justice Transforming Lives was released, defining social justice as making a society that functions better for everyone and being able to provide support and tools to help people turn their lives around. Similarly, Rutenberg and Vokey break down the idea of social justice and treating people fairly into three ideas: equity, equality and harmony. Equality is based on equal treatment, so everyone gets the same. Equity is based on what an individual needs, and harmony is what someone deserves. As you can see from this table, each principle of justice has a different treatment and outcome. Justice as harmony means individuals are treated differently and their outcome at the end is different, whereas justice as equity means individuals are treated differently depending on what they need, but the outcome for each person should be similar. Justice as equality means that everyone is treated exactly the same, but the outcome will be different because sometimes people need different support. In modern society, there are still a number of social justice issues. However, this documentary will focus on one area of social justice within education. In 1833, when the Slavery Abolition Act put an end to slavery across most of the British Empire, it was believed that a new era of social justice was dawning. Yet, 187 years later, racism is an issue faced by many on an everyday basis. Did you know the earliest usage of the word racism can be dated back to the 1902 Oxford Dictionary? Presently, the Oxford Dictionary defines racism as the inability or refusal to recognise the rights, needs, dignity or value of people of particular races or geographical origins. Despite this, the definition of racism is highly disputed and can be considered to be quite controversial. Gilborn states that there are numerous forms of racism, so it's common for racism to be spoken about in the plural as racisms. Similarly, the Equality Act expresses that the term racism includes colour, nationality and ethnic national origin. On the other hand, Dorling defines racism as the belief in the superiority of a particular race.
Currently, Black, Asian and minority ethnic groups are failing to thrive in the school system. According to Cochran-Smith, there have been disparities in academic achievement, school resources, poverty levels and high school completion rates between different racial and cultural groups since the 1970s. This is an issue that she believes to be a matter of national importance. These disparities in education are supported by statistics that show by the end of primary school, Chinese pupils are around 12 months ahead of white British pupils, closely followed by Indian pupils who are around 7 months ahead. Pupils of Gypsy Roma backgrounds are 18 months behind white British families, with travellers of Irish heritage 14 months behind, and Black Caribbean pupils 5 months behind. An article by The Independent also draws attention to this significant social justice issue by stating that the UK has an unwillingness to accept that black children face discrimination as soon as they enter the education system. This issue is significant as it is unrelated to the intellectual capabilities of the students nor their desires to achieve. This is not reflective of the attitudes or cultural beliefs of different groups, but is down to society. Gawronski further emphasises this point by suggesting that it is reflective of society's level of commitment to the promise made to provide equal educational opportunities. However, there are many laws and acts in place that help fight against racism and to ensure that there is social justice for everyone within society. One example is the Stephen Lawrence report. This stated that racism is something that is spreading through and is routine in many key organisations in society, and this includes educational settings. Another act is the Race Relations Amendment Act, which places duties on public bodies, including schools and the Department for Education. This means that schools have a policy on race equality within the school, meaning that there is equality of opportunity and good relations between peers. Schools also have to make sure they are preventing racism from happening and not just dealing with an issue if it arises. Additionally, the Equality Act places a duty on schools to prevent direct and indirect discrimination, harassment and victimisation because of race and ethnicity, religion or beliefs and other protected characteristics. Despite this, it is clear that this social justice issue is having an effect on children in education. However, it is not just academic achievement which is being impacted. In England, exclusions due to racism in primary schools have gone up by more than 40%, displaying a clear presence of racism in our education system. Similarly, Black Caribbean children are 3.5 times more likely to be excluded. However, it is less likely that excluded black students will fit the typical profile of excluded white students, including having special educational needs, free school meals, numerous previous exclusions, poor attendance records, or criminal records. It has been suggested that schools may exclude black pupils in circumstances where they may not have excluded a white pupil. This suggests that the exclusion gap is a result of institutional racism, whereby the decisions made by staff produce a racist outcome. School exclusion represents the most severe denial of education. Despite efforts to improve school provision for pupils who have been excluded, the exclusion gap still results in black pupils being disproportionately denied mainstream education. Exclusions can have detrimental impacts on the education and lives of pupils affected. Apart from the obvious loss of time in education, exclusions have been reported to impact on the likelihood of children dropping out of school and to increase the chances of future incarceration. Other impacts of exclusion may include dislocating them from their peers, the lack of mainstream curriculum, and in some cases, chances of long-term unemployment and even poverty.
These issues raise a series of questions. How can all children be supported in schools? What does inclusive education look like? And of course, how can educators ensure that all children are able to achieve? Equality Act 2010 and the Schools Departmental Advice for School Leaders, School Staff, Governing Bodies and Local Authorities provides some basis for creating inclusive classrooms, schools and education. Under this guidance, schools are expected to ensure that no children are singled out for their race and that they do not face any less favourable treatment. It is the responsibility of the school to check that there are no unjust practices taking place. Particular mention goes to checking that selective schools have no bias against pupils from ethnic minority backgrounds. If students are segregated based on race, this is considered to be direct discrimination. As a result, the guidance states that it is unlawful to divide children into sets or classes based solely on their race. However, it is also clear that it does not limit schools from providing support for issues that children from these ethnic minority groups may face. This guidance also aims to reduce exclusion rates for black boys, to increase understanding between religious groups, to reduce the number of homophobic incidents, to raise attainment in English for boys, to encourage girls to consider non-stereotype career options, and to anticipate the needs of incoming pupils from a new group, such as traveller children. Research by Walton outlines the importance of society understanding racial, ethnic and cultural differences due to the lay perspectives that society has. There is also research suggesting that by increasing awareness of racism and educating society will lead to reducing racism at individual levels. This research supports the usage of training and resources used in schools to prevent racism. Therefore, it is important that all members of staff within the school setting should undergo professional development training to make sure that they are comfortable in tackling the issue of racism should it ever arise within the school environment. One way in which schools and children are supported in the prevention of racism is that all schools must teach RE to pupils at all key stages. In fact, all state schools are required to make provision for a daily act of collective worship and must teach religious education to pupils at every key stage. This gives the children an insight into the lives of people who have different beliefs to them, what they may wear, may eat, and where they may worship. It also gives children a chance to ask questions in an environment that they are safe and comfortable in. However, Sonia Thompson, a head teacher of a primary school, argues that schools need to audit their curriculums to ensure that they are using the information and knowledge BAME students can offer in order to ensure that they have curriculum-rich knowledge. This article also emphasises that even schools in primarily white areas have an obligation to teach inclusively. To help teach acceptance, there are a range of children's books which look at social justice issues in a way that children will understand through simple language and pictures. These books can be used in class discussions to get children asking questions and left in reading corners for children to read independently or with a partner. Sadly, racism can go overlooked in the classroom as teachers feel uncomfortable or poorly equipped with the skills to tackle racist incidents. As a result, teachers often dismiss incidents or are unsure of how to respond effectively. This is supported by Cahill, who suggested that the nature and extent of racism was poorly understood and that principals and teachers were not well equipped to deal with the more covert expressions of racism. More recently, Diker and Buehler have argued that while many white teachers are indeed unwilling to engage with issues of race, this reluctance sometimes stems not from a desire to appear non-racist, but from an acute sense of the complexity and personal threat involved in race talk. This is supported by a primary school teacher who has something to say on this matter.
I believe the biggest struggle with dealing with racism in this school is the lack of knowledge for both students and teachers. Also, it's not always the beliefs and opinions of the children, it can be the beliefs and opinions of people from home, and this is harder to educate.
This lack of confidence in dealing with such issues may be down to training. This is supported by statistics which show that 22% of NQTs describe their courses poor at preparing them to teach pupils from minority ethnic backgrounds. Colour remains a critical, distorting and dangerous signifier of difference and inequality, and this is truer of white areas than more ethnically mixed ones. As future teachers, these are a few things that we'll ensure we do.